Do these monsters really exist? Read these amazing true stories, then decide for yourself. Beastly Tales, packed with facts you need to read, by Malcolm Yorke. Beastly Tales, Yeti, Bigfoot, and the Loch Ness Monster, written by Malcolm Yorke. Contents: page 4, Believe It or Not. Page 6, The Loch Ness Monster. Page 22, Yeti. Page 36, Bigfoot. Page 48, Glossary. Believe it or not. Around the world, people tell stories about seeing mysterious monsters in remote places. The storytellers are often accused of making things up, but sometimes a discovery is made that proves them right. Few people believe the stories about a man-like ape in Africa, a dragon in Indonesia, or a huge sea monster with long tentacles. However, we now know these creatures as the mountain gorilla, the Komodo dragon, and the giant squid. Could there be other large creatures still undiscovered in the world? Mountain gorillas were discovered by European explorers in 1902. The Komodo dragon is a meat-eating lizard that can grow bigger than a person, but no one knew about it until 1912. The kraken of old Norwegian tales is now believed to be the giant squid, which can grow twice as long as a bus. The Loch Ness Monster. "Dad, Dad, what's that in the loch?" shouted Jim Aiton. It was a calm summer's evening in 1963. Jim was working on his father's farm on Loch Ness, a lake in Scotland, when he looked up to see a strange creature moving silently down the lake. It was huge. Jim had never seen anything like it before. The two men nearby heard Jim's shouts and rushed to join him and his father. The excited group wanted a closer look. They ran to the lake, climbed into a boat, and headed straight toward the creature. Loch Ness lies in northern Scotland. Loch Ness. Loch Ness is a long, narrow lake surrounded by mountains. It is in a part of Scotland where few people live. They headed straight toward the creature. The creature's head looked a bit like a horse's head, only bigger. Its neck stretched nearly 6 feet, 2 meters, as tall as a full-grown man. Its snake-like body was as long as a bus. Could it be the legendary Loch Ness Monster that people had talked about for years? Suddenly, the creature rose out of the water. Then it dived. An enormous wave hit the boat. It rocked and swirled around. Had the creature seen the men? Was it about to attack? A few seconds later, the creature's head reappeared. It was farther away now. The monster seemed more frightened than ferocious. Then it was gone. The men searched and searched for it, but they never saw it again. It was 20 years before anyone heard the story about what had happened that day. Jim and his father didn't think many people would believe them. But the Aitons and their friends are not the only people who claim to have seen this mysterious monster. A deep, dark lake. If you were to view the lake, it would be hard to imagine that it has a depth of more than 700 feet, 213 meters. That's deep enough to hide a 42-story building. This photograph, taken by monster hunter Anthony Shields 14 years after the Aiton sighting, seems to show the monster just as the Aitons described it. One of the earliest known sightings was made more than 1,400 years ago by Saint Columba, a traveling Irish holy man. Legends tell in 565 AD, the saint saw a water monster attack a swimmer in Loch Ness. When the saint ordered it to leave the swimmer alone, the monster retreated immediately. Saint Columba is featured on this stained glass window in a Scottish castle chapel. Loch Ness legends. There are many legends of water monsters living in other Scottish lakes. The Scottish people call these monsters kelpies. The Loch Ness Monster first became famous in 1933 after a road was built around the steep sides of the Loch Ness Valley. Tourists could now explore this remote area for the first time. It was not long before reports of monster sightings began appearing in newspapers all around the world. The monster is the star attraction on this 1930s postcard from Loch Ness. Spotting the monster soon brought rewards. Newspapers would pay a lot of money for a photograph of the monster, even if it was blurred. Fortune seekers, scientists, and monster enthusiasts swarmed around the loch, all wanting to take the best monster picture ever. Over the years, the searcher used more and more modern equipment. In 1972, an underwater camera produced a close-up of a strange object in the loch. When scientists used a special computer to sharpen up the image, this is what they saw. Could it be one of the monster's flippers? I'll give you a closer view of that. I don't see much. But you decide. The underwater photograph seems to show a flipper, but no one can be sure because the image is so grainy. It is hard to see or take a photograph in the lake water because it's full of tiny pieces of peat or dead plant material. In 1987, a team of scientists searched the loch with high-tech equipment for a project called Operation Deep Scan. A line of 19 boats, each fitted with a sonar scanner, moved up the loch. What they discovered amazed them. Sonar scanners. A sonar scanner sends out sound waves. The sound waves bounce back off objects in their way, making a picture of the objects on the sonar screen. Some scans showed huge objects moving deep in the lake. The objects were bigger than sharks, but smaller than whales. Were they huge fish? Or was it a family of Loch Ness monsters? Again, the murky water kept the scientists from knowing the answer. This diagram shows how the boats with sonar scanners moved in a line so that no part of the loch would be missed. Without clear pictures, scientists must rely on people's descriptions to know what the monsters look like. It seems that the creature has a long, thin neck, a bulky body with 4 flippers, and a long, powerful tail. No animal living today fits that description. However, one prehistoric creature does. Artists use eyewitness descriptions to design this model of the Loch Ness Monster. Cryptoclitus was a plesiosaur, a huge fish-eating reptile that lived in the sea. Some people think it looked a lot like the Loch Ness Monster. However, Cryptoclitus is thought to have disappeared from the Earth 70 million years ago. Could it have lived on unnoticed? Is the Loch Ness Monster a survivor from the dinosaur age? Or were the people who saw it simply fooled by boats, logs, shadows, or giant eels? Could some of the sightings be the result of practical jokes? No one knows the truth yet. This fossil skeleton of Cryptoclitus is twice as long as an adult person. From a distance, it would be easy to mistake this log for a monster. Could everyday things like this explain some of the Loch Ness Monster sightings? Yeti. Even police felt afraid when they saw the footprints of the beast that attacked Lakpa Dolma. In 1974, teenager Lakpa lived in a Nepalese village high in the Himalayan mountains. Each day she climbed partway up Mount Everest to graze a herd of yaks, a type of cattle. Lakpa saw few people on the steep mountain paths. Only Buddhist monks who chose to build their monasteries far from towns and cities lived this high up. Lakpa had heard tales of the Yeti, an ape-like beast said to live in the Himalayas, but the mountains stretch for thousands of miles. She never expected to see one herself. Many Nepalese people live on the slopes of the Himalayas. The Himalaya Mountains, China, Tibet, Mount Everest, India. The highest in the world. At 29,028 feet, 8,848 meters, Mount Everest is the world's highest mountain. It takes weeks to climb to the top. Like these people, Lakpa's family were Sherpas, people who first came from eastern Tibet to Nepal around 400 years ago. Valuable creatures. People living among the Himalayas rely on yaks for many things. These hardy beasts provide meat, dairy products, clothing, and fuel. One day, as Lakpa grazed the herd, she noticed that the yaks seemed restless. She thought that a bear or a snow leopard might be nearby. Lakpa led the yaks to a clear, snow-fed stream. She drank herself, then watched as the yaks fed on the tough mountain grasses. Suddenly, Lakpa heard a strange, deep grunt. She whirled around as a huge, two-legged creature came rushing toward her. It was a Yeti. Terrified, she broke into a run, but it was too late. The Yeti grabbed Lakpa in its long, hairy arms. She screamed and kicked, but the Yeti was too strong. Then, without warning, the beast dropped her into the icy stream and turned on her yaks. With powerful blows, it quickly killed 3 of the enormous beasts. Lakpa crawled out of the stream and ran home as fast as she could. When the police investigated the scene, they found the Yeti's large footprints, but not the Yeti. Lakpa's story is similar to many other tales of the Yeti reported by people living in the Himalayas. Mountaineers, drawn by the challenge of exploring the world's highest mountain range, have also told chilling tales of this ape-like beast. In 1951, mountaineer Eric Shipton and his party were exploring an unknown part of the Himalayas when they came across a line of strange footprints in the snow. The footprints looked similar to human footprints, but they were twice as wide. They had sunk much deeper into the snow than the climbers' boot prints, so they must have been an incredibly heavy creature. Most amazing of all, the clear toe print showed that the creature was walking barefoot in the freezing snow. Michael Ward, one of Shipton's climbing companions, compared his own footprints on the right with those of the creature. Eric Shipton placed his 13-inch ice axe in this photograph to show the size of the footprints. In 1970, another mountaineer had an even closer encounter with a Yeti. Don Willens was climbing in the Himalayas when a Sherpa guide called out, "Yeti coming!" Don looked up, but only caught a quick look at the black, ape-like figure before it disappeared behind a ridge. The next day, Don found the creature's footprints in the snow. They were about the same size as his boot prints. The Sherpa guide told him that the prints were made by a baby Yeti. Don Willens. This Yeti seems skilled at surviving on its own in a frozen environment. Photograph shows model. A beast called Yeti. The name Yeti comes from the Sherpa word yetta, which means that thing. The abominable snowman is another name for the Yeti. A drawing of a Yeti based on eyewitness descriptions. A Yeti illustration from a French magazine. Later that night, Don saw the creature again. He was looking out of his tent into bright moonlight when it came lapping along. It headed for a clump of trees and began pulling the branches. Don grabbed his binoculars, but the creature suddenly noticed him and ran across the mountain and out of sight. The number of Yeti sightings caught the interest of some scientists. They studied photos and plaster casts of Yeti footprints, then compared them with other animal footprints. They decided that the Yeti footprints could not have been made by a bear, an ape, an antelope, or any other known animal. Aside from footprints, little evidence for the Yeti has been found. There was excitement when a Nepalese monk gave a Yeti scalp to Sir Edmund Hillary, one of the first men to climb Mount Everest. The Yeti scalp given to Sir Edmund Hillary. I'll give you a closer look at that. Edmund Hillary handed the scalp over to scientists. It turned out to be a fake made of goat antelope hair. But Yeti footprints are still being found. In 1992, Julian Freeman Atwood found footprints on a glacier that no one had climbed for 30 years. Will the mystery of the Yeti ever be solved? What sort of creature is it? Where does it sleep? How does it find enough food on the snow-covered mountains? Maybe you will be the first one who discovers the answers. Monster Mania. Fascination with the Yeti has inspired many stories. Some are serious news articles, others are just good fun. Yeti footprints have been discovered on other mountains in Asia, as well as the Himalayas. These footprints, found by Julian Freeman Atwood, were on a glacier in Mongolia. Bigfoot. Albert Ostman was expecting a quiet time when he headed into a forest near Vancouver, Canada, for a camping trip in 1924. One night, though, he noticed that something had been searching through his pack. He thought it was a porcupine or a bear, but it turned out to be neither. In the middle of the night, Albert woke with a jolt. Someone or something was lifting him up inside his sleeping bag. Albert was trapped. For hours, he was bumped and bounced around as something carried him over rough ground. When daylight came, Albert got a look at his captor, and it wasn't alone. The mysterious Bigfoot is said to live in forests in the Pacific Northwest. Room to hide. Forests cover around 340,000 square miles, 888,000 square kilometers of the Pacific Northwest. 4 huge, hairy beasts, 3 adults and a child, surrounded him. They looked half ape and half human. To Albert's relief, they did not hurt him, but they would not let him leave. For 6 days, he was their prisoner. Then one day, the oldest male ate some tobacco from Albert's pack and soon became ill. As he rolled around on the ground in pain, Albert made his escape. Back in Vancouver, locals told Albert that his captors were Big Feet. These mysterious creatures have been sighted thousands of times in the forests of the Pacific Northwest. A Bigfoot is said to look similar to a Yeti, although it could be even bigger. Some people have reported seeing Big Feet that were 8 feet, 2.5 meters tall. The creatures are covered in hair and have flat faces, short necks, and wide shoulders. A Bigfoot has never been caught dead or alive, but in 1967, 2 California men claimed that they captured one on film. Albert Ostman photographed 33 years after his capture. Bigfoot's many names. Native Americans have told stories of Big Feet for centuries. Different tribes have given the creatures different names, such as Sasquatch or Omaha. Comparing a possible Bigfoot footprint left with an adult man's foot right shows how the creature got its name. According to Roger Patterson, he and a friend set off on horseback to find a Bigfoot. Armed with a movie camera, they were searching in an area where there had already been some sightings. They were riding alongside a stream when they rounded a corner and saw a Bigfoot by the water's edge. Roger's horse reared up, throwing Roger to the ground. He jumped up and began filming. The Bigfoot ran toward the forest. Roger ran after it, filming the whole time. Some scientists thought the film was a fake, but they couldn't prove it. These four photographs are from the actual film shot by Roger Patterson. Experts in the US and Russia studied the way Bigfoot moved. They decided that it would be very difficult for anyone in a fur suit to run in such a natural way. Roger had made plaster casts of the Bigfoot's footprints. The cast showed that the creature's feet were 14.5 inches, 37 centimeters, long. Each foot had 5 toes, like a human foot, but the sole of the foot was much flatter. Roger Patterson holding the plaster casts of Bigfoot's prints. Bigfoot food. Judging from eyewitness stories, it seems that big feet eat mainly plants, but they have also been spotted eating fish and small animals such as marmots. The same year, logger Glenn Thomas claims he saw 3 big feet farther north in Oregon State. The largest one was moving a pile of huge rocks. Finally, it reached a nest of marmots. From behind the trees, Glenn watched the Bigfoot eat the animals one by one. Later, investigators found that the rocks had been moved recently and that marmots did nest in that area. Glenn Thomas on the rocks, where he saw the big feet. Since then, more and more people have produced evidence of big feet. In 1995, a Forest Patrol officer in Washington State claimed that he heard splashes and turned around to see a Bigfoot looking straight at him. One of the photographs taken by a Forest Patrol officer in 1995. Luckily, he had a camera with him and was able to take clear photographs. Experts argue about whether or not the photographs are real. No one has collected absolute proof that big feet exist, but the evidence seems overwhelming. Tape recorders show that they grunt, whistle, roar, bark, and howl. Thousands of footprints have been found in mud, sand, and snow. What should we do next? Some people think we should trap or shoot one. Others say we should leave them alone. What do you think? Bigfoot fakes. Some people have dressed up in Bigfoot suits as a joke to sell pictures to newspapers. However, the fact that one story is false does not mean that they all are. Glossary. Beastly Tales. I hope you enjoyed it. beastly tales, packed with facts you need to read. A few seconds later, the creature's head reappeared. It was farther away now. The monster seemed more frightened than ferocious. Then it was gone. The men searched and searched for it, but they never saw it again.